I was
All right, welcome to All Sports BPT. You're here with me, Ben Kaysen, and Tolly Beatson, who is now joining us from London.
How are we doing, everyone?
So it's good to have everyone here for this late night lounge
Yeah.
edition. Going a bit more into the NBA since we haven't been able to cover that as much in our regular podcast. Um, Tolly, let's hear your thoughts on probably the biggest move of the offseason, and that's Russell Westbrook and John Wall being traded for each other.
Yeah, that's a big surprise. I was surprised when it came through, and after I thought about it, it makes sense. I mean, both players were clearly not happy with the each organization, respectively. Um, how it's going to play out, it's going to it'll be strange to see how Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal operate on the court together. But I think their dynamic could work well. I mean, Russell Westbrook's going to be the explosive, attack the rim as we've seen from him throughout his entire career. He's going to be extremely aggressive and get under everyone's skin. And I think Bill might benefit from that because it takes the target off his back because obviously he's been the main man at the Wizards organization with John Wall being out for such a long time. I think it could help him free him up. He could get more open shots, I think. But I'm interested to hear what you think about that.
Yeah, so I mean, I think everyone kind of had the same reaction when they saw this trade. They were like, does either team actually get better from this? Because you look at both of those players and they're pretty comparable when it comes down to their skills. And you know, I still there's some question marks on to how John Wall will look after his multiple injuries. But from videos I've seen, he looks like he's going to be coming back to form pretty well. Now, the question I have with the Rockets is now they have two guys who have come off of Achilles injuries, which with John Wall and DeMarcus Cousins both being in that spot, and both are going to be playing pretty big roles on this team. So you have to wonder if the Rockets are going to be able to last the whole season without having another major injury.
Yeah, no, I agree. It'll be interesting to watch and see it play out. However, they're both veteran players now. Obviously, they've been in the league for over a decade, both of them, and you wonder if that kind of mentality can thrive in the Rockets because it looked to me, tell me if I'm wrong, but they looked almost the person you look to through adversity. I mean, you see him, he's quite moany to the refs. You know, he doesn't seem to pull his players. Like he'll dish balls to the corner, players will miss threes, and you see him throw his hands up. It just seems like he's not an out and out leader, or not a leader from visually from the outside. Maybe inside he's great, but from the outside he doesn't look like he's going to lead a team to the playoffs. Where obviously with DeMarcus Cousins, John Wall, I think with that veteran IQ, I mean they could probably lead this team and almost restructure them to be at least more disciplined.
Yeah, I think there's definitely going to be questions with them. And now the question is starting to arise within the Rockets. Is James Harden the one who can't play with superstars? And and one of the things I'll be looking forward to is how John Wall takes this, like takes his approach into this season. Is he going to take kind of a back seat to him and just kind of fill in the spots? Because I think he's a much more dynamic player than Harden. Like he's gonna push the pace of the court even with his injuries. And I'm hoping, I'm really hoping that all this time off for him, he's really improved his 3 point shooting. You know, he wasn't a great 3 point shooter, but I don't think he was as bad as Russell Westbrook was. And so I think that adds a little bit of, spreading out the court a little bit more. And with them being able to run a pick and roll with either DeMarcus Cousins or Christian Wood, I think that gives them a much better scenario than them trying to do the small ball thing. You know, I was all for the small ball thing. I felt bad for PJ Tucker because no 35-year-old man who's 6'5" should have to guard Anthony Davis. But now that gives them options to guard the big men. You got DeMarcus Cousins and Christian Wood. Now you can kind of slide PJ Tucker to the 4 and have him play a more natural power forward position where, you know, with the way the league is going, you're not going to see too many power forwards like Anthony Davis or even like a Kristaps that you're going to have to match up kind of old school, big on big.
Yeah, no, it will be fun to watch them and see who brings up the ball more often. I think John Wall is seems like he might take up that responsibility a bit more, as you said, pick up the pace and kind of move the tempo. But yeah, we'll see how James Harden does with that because he's so dominant with the ball. And you look at their possessions, he's on the ball for almost the 80% of the shot clock. I mean, he's really holding on to it, looking to make things happen by himself. Yeah, and if John Wall has worked on his three-point shot, that's going to be a massive difference because obviously when they were playing last year, as disruptive as last year was, when Russell Westbrook's bringing the ball up the court, he's on outside the three-point line. There's no one in his face because you don't need to be.
Well, and how I mean, it's kind of disrespectful to him, and I know he takes it this way, but when the Utah Jazz were playing them, they had Rudy Gobert guarding him. Like because they were like, you know, Russell Westbrook is pretty much playing our center position, that he's the one running at the basket and he's the one that's going to be the high flyer. So, I mean, honestly, Russell Westbrook was their center last year on the offensive side, at least.
Which is crazy. Yeah, so it would be interesting to watch how that unfolds because obviously John Wall has, I think, a slightly more versatile scoring range than Westbrook. I mean, Westbrook's going to get you triple-double solidly every game, but he's not going to be breaching the 20-point bracket night in and night out. I mean, last year, it was quite rare for him to consistently, I mean, he did break that 20, 30-point bracket, but it didn't seem to be on like a dominant basis. It wasn't like he was pulling defenders where he wanted them and giving us some step backs or some nice jumpers or 3 points and versatility. It was more drive to the basket, layups, dunks, and get free throws if he could. But he was struggling from the 3-point line. I mean, with John Wall, John Wall's going to drive to the basket, but he can dish, he can stop on a dime and pull up and give you a jumper if you need it. So I think it'll give James Harden a lot more opportunity to play 1-versus-1 ISO, which is, I mean, his bread and butter. I mean, he's probably one of the best ISO players in the league.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I think that John Wall's abilities really match up much better with James Harden than Russell Westbrook's does. But let's talk a little bit about what the Wizards are going to look like now with Russell Westbrook on their team.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting watch for the season because I think it's going to go one of two ways. It's going to be Russell Westbrook's put in a puzzle where he doesn't fit and it's a disaster. And once again, the Wizards are struggling to make the playoffs and they're not making the playoffs or they're going to be on the cusp of making the playoffs. Or, I mean, potentially they could just do terribly, but they also could click very well. Russell Westbrook could come in and kind of help facilitate some aggression into that team, pick up the pace. I mean, try and excite the crowd, or if there is a crowd, or excite the team, and give Bill some more kind of help on the defensive side and the attacking side.
Yeah, I actually really like this fit for them. I thought John Wall and Bradley Beal were a very good backcourt whenever they were both healthy together. But for some reason, I keep going over this in my head and I'm like, all right, now Bradley Beal doesn't have to chuck the ball up every single time. So he might, I mean, I still think he might be scoring 27 points a game this season. but now you have a much more dominant player in like a more ball dominant player. I think when you come down to it, if they're on the right team, John Wall and Russell Westbrook give you the same amount of uh, like stats and effect on the game. Just depending on what team they're on. I like this because Russell Westbrook's really going to be really aggressive, and now he's got Bradley Beal, who we know can be a good spot up shooter. And with them having now their first round draft pick, Denny Avila, Rui Hachimura, Davis Bertans, Thomas Bryant, I think the floor is going to be very spaced out for him, where Westbrook can still do a pick and roll. He still can drive. He can still do all those things, but he doesn't have to be the de facto center in the offense like he was last year, kind of playing off ball, which we know he doesn't really do that well. So I think, at least on paper, it's going to be a good matchup. And we've heard some rumblings from the NFL and some of the players about them saying that Russell Westbrook is a really good leader.
Yeah.
And all these things. But I don't think since KD has left, he's had either the situation or the player that matches with him well enough that you can really see him thrive. If we can start to see Russell Westbrook kind of take a page out of CP3's book and start to evolve his game to the fact that, he's probably got a year left of prime physical ability, maybe 2. So he's got to start developing, how am I going to survive in the long run as an NBA player? So if he can start to make those moves, I still think that he can get another a good 4 years out of him. And then, you could see the Wizards really start to push up, because Denny Avila and Rui Hachimura, if they start to develop and make good complementary pieces to those 2 stars, you could see a very good team developing in the East.
Yeah, definitely. There's always been a question mark on Russell Westbrook's IQ, it seems, in the game. With this Washington team, he's going to have, as you said, this floor's going to be spaced out, so he's going to have more opportunity to rest his body. He's not going to be in the paint consistently challenging for rebounds over and over, and consistently challenging with players who are much taller than him and much stronger. I mean, he has that versatility now and that freedom where he doesn't have to go and challenge there. I mean, he will obviously on a more inconsistent basis. So I think that will save his legs, or at least save his body for this season. And I mean, if they keep progressing that Washington team, that single trade could extend his career by a few more years, just purely based on the fact that he's not pushing himself 100% physically every single night.
Yeah, and I mean, now with some good pieces, I think that you're not going to have to see. He's going to play 150% every night. That's just the way that Russell Westbrook is. But I think if he's able to pick and choose whenever he does that now that he has a good, like Bradley Beal, he can either play alongside Russell Westbrook, or he can bring the ball up. So if there are times that Russell Westbrook needs to rest for a game, or he's on the bench, I don't think you're going to see that much of a drop off in production.
Yeah, no, I agree.
But we'll move on. We'll move on from there. The news that came out earlier this week was Anthony Davis finally signed his deal with the Los Angeles Lakers. I think a lot of people were wondering what was taking so long on that, because everyone knew that AD was going to go back. I don't think there was any doubt in anyone's mind that AD was going back, especially after winning a championship. But now he signs a 5-year, $190 million contract, making him a very happy man.
He's going to need it with those California taxes. I think half of it's gone already as soon as he signed the paper.
Yeah. I think so, and that could just be even worse moving forward.
Yeah.
But I
I think
think,
it's a no-brainer. No-brainer. I mean,
yeah,
you saw the connection with LeBron throughout the season, throughout the playoffs. I mean, he just looks at home there. I mean, he looked decently at home in New Orleans, but most rookies do in that for the team they drafted to and they play for. But then he became too big for the New Orleans. I mean, that team that he was on, he was just too big for it. And now he's in the Lakers. He has the obviously the one of the best players, if not the best player to ever touch a basketball, LeBron James, on his team. He gets to work with him, learn some insights from him, get some basketball IQ. I think we're seeing him develop. I think he is. People thought he may have hit his ceiling, but I think he just smashed that ceiling, and he's now creating a new Anthony Davis that could be a challenger for MVP. I mean, the way he's moving, his mobility, his scoring ability, we saw through the playoffs. I mean, that diversity that they have at the Lakers. I mean, they won the offseason 100%. And honestly, with him signing that long-term contract, you can see LeBron getting an extension in a few years' time, and because he doesn't have to be the person who gets all of the points. I mean, obviously, he probably will because it's LeBron, but when you have Anthony Davis, you could easily give up the ball a bit more as Anthony Davis continues to progress.
and you have to think that this kind of model that the Lakers have of having two very dominant players on their team and then being able to surround them with very good role players like they have done this offseason might be a recipe for success moving forward. I think the big three era has kind of died where we saw like the Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, LeBron James. They took up so much of the cap space that they weren't able to surround themselves with players that were good enough. You know, I think those three players were better than any three players on the Lakers, but the Lakers have a better overall team. So I would rather go that route. So you have more people you can depend on than adding a third star to a team.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, and we were saying this on a previous podcast regarding James Harden's potential move to the Nets. I mean, it's great. You have three of the best players of all time on the court, but then who else do you have? I mean, you basically have Walmart assistants playing. Obviously, they're top NBA players, but in terms of the NBA, obviously they're not the greatest, and you physically can't get them, or financially you can't get them because, as you said, the cap space is only limited, and these massive star players aren't going to take that much of a cut for to play with other great players. And I think, yeah, that the three-man era is done. And I think, honestly, as you were discussing with filling the Lakers with such great pieces around Anthony Davis and LeBron James, that must have been taken into consideration by Anthony Davis when signing the contract, because everyone questioned the franchise of the Lakers after Kobe retired and through that kind of wishy-washy period where Magic Johnson was fired and they were making strange picks and they were trading kind of in a weird manner. I think now it looks like the GMs and all of the staff in the Lakers organization have an idea, have a plan, and they're executing. I mean, they made some big signings, some good free agents. The Lakers team is solid, and quite frankly, I think they're the team to beat, really.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, first of all, because they're the defending champions, but now because I think they got better,
Yeah.
which is scary. You know, some people have said they think that they've gotten worse on defense, which I don't know if I totally agree with that.
Mm.
You know, it might be a little bit of a downgrade, but when you look at the team defense, I don't think it's really going to be that big of a difference um, when everything comes out to play. But what I think here has been set up here by first getting LeBron and then second by getting AD is now you're looking at a cycle where whenever LeBron eventually does retire, which, he is coming to the end here. I think he's still going to try and play a year with Bronny.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why you saw him sign that 2-year contract. Bronny's going to be going to college soon. He'll be a one and done. And then he'll make it to the NBA. But look at it. Anthony Davis signs a 5-year contract. LeBron signs a 2-year extension. Now, I don't know how much. So I guess that would be a 3-year deal with what LeBron has remaining on his current deal. So AD still has 2 years after that where he wouldn't have LeBron. Let's just assume LeBron retires after that. But that now gives them space to sign another person to then fill in and play with AD. And who doesn't want to play with AD?
Everyone.
I mean, at that point, Anthony Davis will be a consensus like top 3 player in the league. And I don't because I think by that time KD isn't going to be who he once was. James Harden's going to be down. I think you're going to be looking at, is there a possibility that the Lakers try and lure Luka away from the Mavericks?
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have the cap space.
It's going to be the same kind of thing, like you take out one LeBron and you bring in a white version of LeBron in Luka Doncic. And I mean that I think the Lakers are priming themselves for 10 years of good basketball if they continue to fit someone along a big star.
Yeah, no, I agree. And as you mentioned, I mean, this seeming mathematical game that they're playing with the players' ages and their potential retiring ages, whether that came into the factor of thinking about the LeBron AD. I mean, as you said, I mean, when LeBron retires, AD will be in his prime, which will leave a massive cap space for a massive star of kind of 5 years or potentially 5 years younger than AD or more to step into that LeBron role. And then obviously the cycle continues. Then AD will go on to he'll retire, and then someone else will fill in for AD. I mean, obviously these are fantastic players, and finding replacements is going to be extremely difficult. But I mean, as you said, I mean, wow, they're in a fantastic position.
I mean, even think about this. Even at the worst, think that James Harden declined an extension. He's going to be a free agent soon.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, boy, the possibilities are all open for LA. They've got the city, they've got the money, and they've now have the stars that they can continue to just move along and get back into their like dynasty ways.
Yeah. I mean, as you said, they have the city, everything's there. They couldn't have been placed in a better location. I mean, people want to go to these teams because of who they are, their history, and everything that surrounds the franchise.
Yeah, but let's move on to a little bit of a different topic here. With do you think there's going to be any more big moves in the offseason, or do you think that there's any like free agents that are still out there that can possibly like make a difference on a contender?
Well, yeah, it's going to be an interesting kind of last few weeks of the free agency. There's not any massive players in free agency. I mean, you can correct me if you think there are. There's not anyone in the free agency at the moment who's going to make a massive difference on a team. One trade, I mean, there's a few potential trades out there, but I think honestly we might be near the end of any massive news. I mean, there might be a few small pieces here and there. There's still obviously we'll see if James Harden's happy with this move, because I haven't heard him come out and say that he loves John Wall and wants to play with him 100%. I've heard him confirm that he liked the trade and he's excited to play with John Wall, but it'll be interesting to find out whether he still wants to be the Rockets, and if he's genuinely just fallen out with the organization, where he would go at this point is a massive question mark that I potentially don't see us honestly seeing the answer for. And apart from that, I mean, what do you think? Do you think there's any big ones out there that I haven't thought about?
So in terms of free agent signings, I don't think there's going to be any signings there that really pop off the page. I think that you may see some pieces here or there that Marvin Williams is going to get picked up by some contender to provide some 3-and-D. But I think the one move that still might happen, and I think would be good for both teams, is Aaron Gordon getting traded to the Minnesota Timberwolves. It's been rumored that there's a possibility of that happening, and I think it would be a good fit for the Timberwolves and good for the Magic to get rid of Aaron Gordon, because I don't think that he's a good fit on that team. And I think he could provide a good power forward for the Timberwolves and really round out their starting lineup.
Yeah, I mean, you said power forward. You know, the New York Knicks organization's ears just lit up. They'll do anything for a power forward. They will. But honestly, yeah, no, that would be a good move, and I think it'd be good to cash out on him now, because obviously he's a star. I mean, we all know that. How big of a star he will become is a question mark that will only be filled by time. But he seems like he's going to be an incredible player. Just slightly off that, the talk of Aaron Gordon. What do you think about Bogdan Bogdanovic? Where does his career go from here? He's 28 years old. Do you think he'll be an all-star before he retires? I mean, it's going to be interesting. I mean, he hasn't really put up any massive numbers in his time in the league.
We're talking about the one going to the Hawks, right?
Yeah. Not Bojan. He's about 300. He's only 31. He looks about 50, but we're talking about good old Serbian Bogdan.
Yeah, so I don't think he's ever going to be an all-star. He came into the league late, and it took him a little bit to get things going for his career. And now people kind of view him as he's a solid wing player that's going to provide some great scoring for your team, but that's it. I think it's a good pickup by the Hawks to get him. I still think that the Bucks are really going to miss his outside scoring on their team, though. I don't think you're going to see too much of a change, because I don't think Dante DiVincenzo and Bogdanovic have too much of different abilities to them. It's not like you're trading like a defensive-minded guy for a three-point shooting guy. They're both pretty similar in the way that they are on the court, but I don't think that there's going to be anything that's really going to jump off the page for you. I think that Bogdan provides 15 points per game off the bench for the Hawks.
No, I agree. I asked this for two reasons. Firstly, because I've seen some chat in the media. I've seen some articles regarding Bogdan saying that this may revamp his career, because everyone was excited for him when he came in. He hasn't really met that kind of excitement, and people are thinking that he could potentially be an incredible player for the Hawks and make a massive impact. And secondly, because the Hawks look good at the moment, don't they? They look like they're in a good position, a team that had almost no chance of reaching the playoffs.
Yeah, they're built a little weird right now. I'm not sure where everyone fits in this. I feel like the Hawks were just trying to acquire players at this point, but they weren't really seeing how they were fitting on their team. So you have to think that they now are 3 deep at point guard with Trae Young, Rondo, and they signed Chris Dunn.
Mm-hmm.
Then at shooting guard, you have Kevin Huerter, who they've been very high on, and Bogdanovich. At small forward now, you have DeAndre Hunter, Cam Reddish, and Danilo Gallinari. And then you have John Collins, Clint Capella. They drafted that Oneka. I don't want to try and pronounce his last name. As a center / power forward. Even if you slide Danilo to power forward, they've got a lot of money tied up in people who aren't going to be playing a lot of minutes. And I don't know if I like that, especially the Danilo Gallinari. You've been acquiring this young trend of, like, I think the core group of DeAndre Hunter, Huerter, and Cam Reddish are going to be very good pieces for them. But I kind of see this as a New York Knicks kind of move where they're denying their young players good playing time. And hey, maybe they've decided that these guys aren't going to be the ones that really carry their team or move forward. And that'll be for us to see this season if those three young players are actually going to do anything, or if the Hawks are going to try and move on from them and try and cash on this limited window that they have with John Collins and Trae Young.
Yeah, no, it'd be fun to watch. I mean, they're an exciting team, and anytime that anyone has a chance to see Trae Young play, it's a show. Do you think they're going to get in the playoffs? Do you think they've got the pieces? I mean, they look solid. I mean, if you looked at their statistics on 2K or something, they look like solid. But as you said, it's putting the puzzle together and having the pieces are two different things.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I think this year is going to be probably one of the deepest Eastern Conference sides that we've ever seen. I mean, you know that Milwaukee's still going to be a top team in the conference. Toronto will be a playoff team, though I think they'll take a step backwards. It'll be interesting to see how Boston does. I feel like there's some, we know that Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are going to provide them with two all-star caliber players, but I feel like they've rubbed Kemba Walker the wrong way with them trying to ship him out this offseason. The Miami Heat, who made the finals, are still there, and I think they got a little bit better. I think the Pacers might take a step backwards as well, because now the Nets are going to be back and healthy. You have the 76ers, who I think they have a better fit team. And then the Wizards, the Magic, even the Hornets might be a fringe playoff team this year, and the Hawks. I think you now have, out of the 15 teams in each conference, usually you're looking at maybe 10 teams.
Yeah.
I think there's 12 or 13 teams in the Eastern Conference that could make the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, that's a strong conference. I mean, you look at the East and the West, and I'm looking at the team for team. I mean, all the teams in both sides. I think the East just looks more solid and complete. I mean, team for team, potentially, than the West at the moment.
Yeah, because when you look at it, I think the Clippers are going to take a step backwards.
Yeah, me too. I mean, that doesn't work. I think over there, the Clippers, something's just not clicking.
I think it's Paul George.
Yeah, me too. I completely agree.
I think people. I think so. Two things. I think people are realizing Kawhi Leonard isn't a leader at all.
No.
He's been in two different organizations where they've had leaders around him that kind of cover up his shortcomings as a leader. And I think Paul George is a pussy.
He just went out straight and said it.
I think he is. I don't think that, you see him during the season, he's an all-star caliber player, but he always
Mhm.
chokes. He always chokes. I
Yeah.
I think if he's a third option on a team, I think he does well. But I mean, like, Chris Bosh was a third on the Miami Heat. And,
Mhm.
he got a bunch of crap, but he just decided to get to work. He got better at defending. He got stronger. He just became a rebounding guy. And if he had to score, he did. Paul George is not that player. You've seen him constantly get his ankles broke. You've seen people hitting game winners over him on multiple occasions. I don't think that I don't think he fits. I don't think he's a top player in the league. Like I put him outside the top 15.
Oh
Um,
wow, yeah, that's a big statement. And you
it,
know what?
I'm
I think I agree with that because
it,
at OKC he was an animal. I mean, he was incredible, and he was playing a lot better than he is now. And I think he had a bit more spirit. I mean, but he's come over to the Clippers, and I think they need to check the label on Paul George because he's not the player they thought he was. I mean, as you said, I mean, he's just being broken. I mean, you can, if you're watching this and you want to have a quick laugh after this podcast, go onto YouTube and type in Paul George broken ankles. It's probably a 2-hour documentary of his lack of defending ability. I mean, it's
yeah,
insane.
yeah. But getting back to the West, I don't want to spend too much time on Paul George.
Yeah.
But the Denver Nuggets are still going to be solid. Houston Rockets might take a step back, but they're still going to be good.
Hmm.
I don't think OKC will make the playoffs this year.
Yeah.
Um,
No.
after sending everyone out, I don't think they make it. I think Dallas makes a big jump, going from 7. I think they're a top 3 team in the West
If
now.
Porzingis stays healthy,
Yeah, yeah.
that's the big if.
If their whole team stays healthy,
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of pieces there that, like, they had Dwight Powell go down with an Achilles injury last year as well.
Yeah.
But the Trailblazers, I think, will make the playoffs, and they'll probably be a little bit higher seed than they were. Um, I've got to see how the Suns work. On paper, they seem like a really good team, and I am excited for them because I think they will push for a playoff spot. How exactly that's going to work, I'm not sure. I don't think San Antonio will. I don't think the Kings will. Minnesota will push for it, and Golden State will
Hmm.
now. But I think when we went through it, I think the only teams that I can confidently say in the East won't make the playoffs are the Bulls, the Knicks, the Pistons, and the Hawks, or the not the Hawks, the Cavaliers.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the
So
Cavaliers.
so we're talking about like 12 teams that I think are solid in the East. And now, I mean, I think there's 5 teams in the West that don't make the playoffs very
Yeah.
confidently.
What do you think the Pelicans? How do you think they're going to do? I mean, they have a young core, probably been grinding quite hard in the off season.
See, I think they're going to take a step backwards.
You think? You
I
think losing Drew Holiday is going to?
Yeah, so I think it's not going to be like a massive step backwards. I still think they're 2 years like they won't make it this year, but they will make it the following year.
Hmm.
And at that point, I think the conferences would actually be pretty even in terms of how many teams are going to make the playoffs. Um, but they're a really young team. Like, Zion Williamson is the longest tenured Pelican on that team.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I mean, that's incredible. I think JJ Redick will still provide some leadership for that team, but in terms of like that on court presence, Zion and Brandon Ingram would have to take a step up from where they were doing, because I think Drew Holiday was providing such a sense of um, taking the focus off of them
Mm,
that they were able to start to thrive on their own. And I don't think Zion is as good as Drew Holiday. Or I mean, I don't think Lonzo is as good as Drew Holiday. And I think that Drew Holiday actually provided more for the team than Lonzo will ever be able to outside of the passing department. I think Lonzo
yeah.
is a better passer, but I don't know. I don't know about the fit with Steven Adams and Zion being next to each other. Like those are two guys that are just like they're paint dominant players, and that's another one where I think they're right there with the Hawks for me as a team that doesn't fit well
Yeah.
as a team. I think if you had I don't know, maybe a Kevin Love at center instead of
Mm.
Steven Adams, I would feel more confident because he could spread the floor and he doesn't need the ball. But yeah, even like a Miles Turner, I would like more than Steven Adams.
Yeah, he's going to be a weird fit, Steven Adams, in that team. I mean, I don't know how that's going to play out.
I,
I think he might clog up the paint, as you said. He might get in Zion's way. I mean, he's not obviously his mobility's never been great.
mm-hmm.
So it'd be fun to kind of see that play out over the season. Whether they stick with that is we'll see, or whether they'll go back to Zion playing center and swap Steve Adams in for him. I mean, I'm not sure. But yeah, and Lonzo Ball, he's has a massive question mark on how his production's going to be this year, because I mean he's a good point guard, a solid point guard, and he's going to benefit the team. But defensively, he's okay, like he's decent, but not great. Not
Not as good as Holiday.
yeah, not as good as Holiday, and obviously his scoring is not even as close to Holiday. Whether
Yeah.
his production, I mean, his production rate was good until it was getting better until they went to the bubble. So
Mm-hmm.
whether he can kind of rekindle that kind of fire that he was burning at the end of the season pre-bubble and get the ball moving and get some scoring, we'll see. But I'm not sure. It seems like he left his scoring ability in college.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it's a lot of focus, and that'll be something that we have to see with all three of the Ball brothers, with Leangelo now being picked up by the Pistons. Um,
Strange.
I don't know. I don't know if they're mentally strong enough to be stars in this league. They can have star-like moments, and
Mm.
they can put together chunks of a season where they do well, but they're another one where until I see them prove me otherwise, I'm going to continue to say I'm not confident with any of the Ball brothers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I like the potential of LaMelo Ball. He
Yeah.
he's I'd rather have an offensive point guard that's not going to do much guarding. I compare him to a Trae Young.
Mm-hmm.
You know you're not going to get much out of Trae Young defensively.
Yep.
It is what it is. He provides height though. I mean, he's 6'8". He can shoot. He can dribble. He's long. He has the potential there, but is his dad and his own head going to prevent him from being a superstar in this league? And I think it is.
Yeah, I mean, I see. I'm more optimistic with Lamelo. I think Lamelo will be the superstar. I mean, you put him in the Hornets, he has a massive stage for him to perform, and you see through his career. I mean, with his high school career, and then when he went to Australia, he loves a stage and he performs on the stage. And with the Hornets, I mean, that's his city now if he plays well. I mean, there's no one else holding it. I mean, when Kemba Walker left, that City had nothing essentially. So now everyone's going through wearing Lamelo Ball, calling his name. Lonzo Ball, he is on the fence to me whether he's going to be live up to his potential or a bust. I mean, he's going to be a solid point guard, but everyone expected him coming into the league to be one of the best point guards in history and thought he was going to be incredible. And LiAngelo, I mean, I don't know how he's in the league personally. I think you look at Division One players across the country, you could easily snap up some sophomores, freshmen who haven't been drafted this year who are better than him.
LiAngelo is going to be a G League player his whole career.
Yeah.
I think you may see him burst through a little later in his career and actually be like a 3-point shooting specialist. I think he has the best pure stroke out of it, the three Ball brothers. But I don't think he's athletic enough. I just don't think he's long enough or big enough or quick enough that he can really keep up with any like substantial playing time. He'll be a role player his whole career, and he'll pretty much be known just to come in and shoot threes.
Yeah, but it's annoying, isn't it? Because you want to grab all of those three and just smash them together and make one player.
Yeah, I mean, I think the three of them actually would together make a very good player. But the question with the Hornets, and I'm quietly optimistic about the Hornets this upcoming season. I don't know if I'm not going to say they're going to make the playoffs. I think that's too optimistic, but I think you're going to see they're going to push some of the top teams. I think you're going to see them push for a playoff spot. But this is another one where they have to figure out some managing of the players, because now at point guard you have Devonte Graham, who I think should have been a rookie or like on a rookie team last year, or no, not a rookie team, but he should have been like on there for most improved. Like he wasn't even being considered. So
No.
you got Devonte Graham, you got LaMelo Ball, and you have Terry Rozier. They were already trying to split time with Terry and Devonte last year on that team, and now you add someone who I think, at least at first glance, is better than both of them.
Mm-hmm.
So now, where does that fit? And I think that I would get rid of Terry Rozier.
Yeah.
I would try and find him a spot to go to. I wouldn't mind if they tried to trade him to the Magic for like a Terrence Ross,
Yeah.
Kind of player. I think that would provide them with a little bit more wing play. I like their build up. They signed their second round pick Vernon Carey Jr. To a 4-year contract, which is almost unheard of for second round picks. So they're pretty high on him.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's going to be a lot of question marks this season, and will we even be able to get through the season without any interruptions from coronavirus?
Yeah, it seems unlikely. And if you want my personal thoughts on the season, I don't think the season is going to start in a few weeks' time, or if it's going to start, it's going to end very quickly, because they're not going to have a bubble the entire season. They're going to be flying from city to city. We're seeing COVID cases rising rapidly, back to March highs. I just don't understand. I can't see how it would work them consistently traveling. I mean, NBA teams probably travel the most of all teams in the world. I mean, I don't know any teams that fly across the country as
Maybe
much
baseball.
as NBA. Yeah, maybe baseball, but I mean, they have a crazy schedule, and that consistent moving and meeting new characters consistently is going to put a massive question mark on the season.
Yeah. So Adrian Wojnarowski has been putting out a lot of stuff on the new health procedures that the NBA is going to be implementing during the season. And um, they sent out a 158-page revision on their health and safety protocols, um, telling that teams are going to be allowed to go to approved restaurants. So I'm sure that whenever it
Wow.
comes to it, there's going to be restaurants that are just closed for the night, the day,
Hmm.
and just so that they can go
Yeah.
eat there during the day. So there's going to be that. I saw that they were going to be doing, yeah, the NBA will provide twice a week testing for household members of players and staff. So not only is the NBA players are going to be getting tested a ton, but their families are going to be getting tested, or if a friend lives with them or something, they're going to be getting tested a lot. And um, they said in an updated health and safety protocol, the league says that violations that lead to COVID-19 spread that causes schedule adjustments or impacts others' teams could result in fines, suspensions, adjustments, or loss of draft picks and or game forfeitures.
Yeah, that's some heavy punishment because obviously you could take all these measures, but obviously there still are possibilities where you follow all these measures and still somehow get the virus. However, I mean, it seems like they're taking it very seriously. I mean, they did a great job with the bubble. I mean,
Yeah.
so whether that can be maintained, the only issue with that is what happens if there are outbreaks within certain teams because they can only push back games for a certain period. I mean, they're going to just be swapping schedules around like it's nothing.
Well, I think the NBA would have to do their due diligence in making enough putting enough time between games. And since this is a little bit shortened of a season with only 72 games, decreasing it 10 games, I think you're going to see uh, they're going to be making more of an effort to spread it out. So if there does have to be a period where they have to put some games, they're going to have that ability to move that. Um, what I think is interesting is they did say that their players are going to be required to take the vaccine once it is fully approved and
Oh
available to
wow.
them, or they're going to have to take necessary health precautions or other measures to make sure that if there are players who decline to take it, they do have to meet some kind of health standard so that they would be allowed to play.
Yeah, which makes sense, of
Yeah.
course.
But I think there's not only is there going to be a lot of question marks for the teams this season, I think there's going to be a lot of question marks just about the season in general.
Definitely.
And I think that's where we're going to see a lot of things come to fruition, or you're going to see a lot of disappointment this season. Who knows? There might be players that just can't play a lot this season due to the COVID or injuries because of not having enough time to prepare.
Hmm.
I think you're seeing that in the NFL right now with a lot of teams having a lot of injuries. The 49ers have had a ton of injuries. The Steelers are now starting to add up with injuries, with two linebackers having ACL injuries. I know the Ravens have had their problems. It's every team is starting to feel the effects of COVID and not having a normal season.
Yeah, no, definitely.
But I think that was a good jumping off point here for the podcast. A good late night session for us to talk some NBA basketball and talk about everything that's going to be affecting the season and going on during the season.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be exciting. I'm sure everyone watching this is excited for the season or as excited as we are. I mean,
Yeah.
perfect timing to call it because my glass just emptied. And you know, on the late night lounge, we don't have an empty glass.
Yeah, yeah. So perfect timing. But guys, remember, if you want any of these shirts or any of the merchandise, let us know in the comments below. Make sure that you like and subscribe to this so that you can see all of our wonderful videos moving forward. And make sure to look forward for our podcast, which will be coming out Friday next week instead of on Wednesday. Because of one of our guests, we moved things around. So look forward to having Division I basketball player Luke Ruggery on the show. And for those of you who follow TikTok, you'll probably know some of him from his dances. So
Oh no.
yeah, I don't know what we're getting ourselves into here,
Yeah,
Tolly.
yeah, TikTok. I'm too old for TikTok.
Yeah, I am too. But we got to get people from somewhere.
Yeah.
So until next time, guys, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you then.
Thank you.